The endocannabinoid system, it regulates happiness and pain and digestive systems. We didn't discover that until we were researching cannabis.
Hey everybody, welcome to Investing in Cannabis. These are the last days of Prohibition, and this show seeks to feature the stories of the founders, the investors, the marketers that are bridging the gap. The day of getting a little dime bag from your guy on the corner is done. It's not happening. David, thanks so much for being here. Why don't you tell us just what is Cannabis Reports?
Sure, so Cannabis Reports is basically a big, huge platform of cannabis data, and we're trying to build some technology for an open cannabis future.
Got it. So what does that all entail? I mean, you talk about data and cannabis, but what kind of data is there?
So, I mean, we have data on everything, anything from the strains and the seeds, then the companies that make those seeds, all the way down to the chocolates that you consume and lab tests for those chocolates and the companies that make them. Pretty much if it has to do with cannabis, we've got data on it.
Got it. So I can go on Cannabis Reports and search for a strain or an edible, or how does that work? Take me through the experience.
Yeah, so we have everything organized by flowers, extracts, edibles, and products. And we've actually taken the whole idea of a strain and separated that from the flowers as well. So you can actually see an individual flower grown by a particular cultivator and find where that cultivator's flowers are in different locations around you. And for everything in our system, we got a big Find Nearby button. And so we can show you immediately the closest delivery company or dispensary, how much it costs, and you can find the product that you're looking for regardless of where you go to buy it.
And why is it so important that we have that background data, that people are informed about where their cannabis comes from?
Well, it gives people the opportunity to elevate their conversations about cannabis. So there's still a huge stigma surrounding cannabis that has to do directly with education and how much people know about it. And even if people don't, need to know the farm where it came from or the lab where it was tested, given the ability to access that information makes them more comfortable having those types of conversations. They know they can talk about lab testing or talk about farms because it's available to them. And without that availability and that transparency, it leaves us, kind of still talking about indica sativa hybrid and leaving it at that.
Right, yeah. No, I love that you brought up the stigma. That's a theme that we discuss on this show all the time. And I believe that if people are more educated, they will have less negative experience with cannabis, right? I think anybody that tries cannabis and has a negative experience, either they have the wrong strain, right? They get the couch lock, or they're really paranoid they had too much of something, or they just have too much in general, right? And I think those dosages and that education is why something like this is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the consumer standpoint, it's really helpful for people to be able to have an open place where they can develop their own relationship with cannabis at their pace and with as much education available to them as they need. Right now, we're still sort of stuck in people relying on their bud tender or relying on their friends and not really having a place to go explore on their own. And we provide a really big environment with a bunch of data and a bunch of cool stuff to look at so they can learn how they want to.
Yeah, one of my big frustrations for looking up stuff like this, reviews or testing or whatever, is let's say you have a Blue Dream, right? And there's 37 different kinds of Blue Dream all over California. How do you rectify that? I mean, how do you say that my Blue Dream is the same on Cannabis Reports Blue Dream?
So that basically has to do with understanding cannabis a little bit deeper and understanding that, yes, there is a strain called Blue Dream, but that strain gets turned into many different types of the cannabis flower, whether it's shake or seeds or clone or buds. And those particular flowers were grown by one cultivator. And so when you start to identify cannabis by saying, this is Blue Dream from this seed company that was grown by this cultivator, then it's okay that there's 37 or 40 or 140 different Blue Dreams.
Right.
Because you're not just saying Blue Dream anymore. You're not just saying Chardonnay, you're saying Kendall Jackson's Chardonnay.
Right.
And that level of specificity is what we have at Cannabis Reports.
Yeah, I think the wine analogy really does make that much sense. I mean, people like to make that connection so much, but I think when we talk about genealogy, that really does hit home.
Yeah, well, that's where we really shine. I mean, that's where everything started was in identifying, where do things come from? Where are the land races that produced all these flavors and effects that I like? we have that information in spades.
So tell us about the beginning. You said where we started. It was
Yep.
called something different at first, right? Well,
Yep. So originally it was called Smoke Reports.
Okay.
Yeah. And I started it in 2008, following overgrow.com shutting down, which was previously our largest online source of cannabis information. There was about 6 million posts in a forum, pre-Facebook, popularity, big time days. So it was a huge amount of information. And websites were popping up. Weed Maps actually started around 2008.
Okay.
Leafly a couple years later. And
Yep.
they were talking about strains, but they weren't talking about the seed companies that have been developing these strains for decades that deserved the recognition. Greenhouse Seeds, Flying Dutchman Seed Company, Sensi Seeds, all of these companies in the Netherlands and throughout the US as well were just getting ignored. So I started Smoke Reports as a research project. How can we track all of these strains and make sure that data doesn't go anywhere again? So I pulled open the big book of buds and every other piece of information I could get and threw all the strains into a database, and that was Smoke Reports.
And how did you do that? I mean, what is that process like to take Ed Rosenthal's book and get it into a actionable data set? How does that work?
It was months of manual research. So I mentioned the big book of buds, but there was hundreds of sources. I was talking to seed company owners online. I was getting people to scan me old Grateful Dead handouts. I was getting, just anything.
And you were manually entering them.
Manually entering, yeah. Wow. So I had to parse all of this data, and then I was cleaning it up as I went. If I found 2 different people that were mentioning Afghani #1, it's like, well, who's Afghani #1 are you talking about? Because that's important and it means something. And so getting all that in the database, I did it was about 2,750 strains of research, including all of the genetics where they all came from. So, and there was good scientific reasons for doing that, and there continues to be. And so now we have a recommendation engine based on the genetics as well, too.
Oh, fantastic! Tell us a little bit about that.
So when you look at a cannabis strain like Jack Herrera or Skunk #1 or AK-47, you can actually go up the parental lineage. So the parents of this were the parents of this, all the way back to the countries where they came from. So this is Mexican and Thai and South African, or this one is Afghani and Nepalese and Brazilian. And with all that sort of backfilled information, when you fill out a review on Cannabis Reports, we apply that information to all of the strains that exist in the parental lineage.
Got it.
So you end up building your own unique profile of all of these different land races that you've never actually tried before. But as you start to fill out more reviews, you start to expose that, oh, wow, Thai strains make me creative and euphoric. Or I get very strong pain relief from South Indian and Brazilian genetics. And then we can go back down the chain, look at everything around you and say, hey, Brazilian and South Indian works great for pain relief for you. There's a strain called Shark Shock over at this place over here. It's this much. You should try it because it's probably going to work pretty good for pain relief for you.
Wow, and so important to get that level of detail. Anybody, any scientist or doctor, they would suggest if you're looking for pain relief or you have a certain ailment and you find something that works for you, stick with it.
Exactly.
Right, and so being able to know exactly what you need and where to get it, tremendously powerful.
Right, and it's also having a tool to discover what you like and what you need is also a very powerful thing for people too. Because a lot of people know what they like, but a lot more people don't have any clue what they like.
Yeah, especially new patients. How would they know? Okay, so that's kind of the consumer side, right? And it's tremendous value. But then there's also a huge back-end component to this. You have an open API that partners are building on top of, correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was really important to me, coming from a past where I saw all of our data get lost. It was extremely important to me that the data that we were creating and organizing didn't get lost again. And so took a very huge concerted effort to publish all of the data in an open place with great documentation so that developers and technologists could start somewhere and start with something instead of just starting from scratch and taking it on somebody's word that this is Blue Dream or this is,
Right.
So we built out a huge API and we've got, I think 60 or 70 different questions you can ask our database.
Okay.
And people are building all kinds of apps now or doing research with the data. And it's it's been a really interesting experience to see how people are using it.
Yeah, and this became particularly relevant about a month ago or so, or maybe a little more than that. Leafly, which you might disagree, but was widely regarded as probably the leader in this space for some time. They had a very robust API that many other developers, companies, it was the backbone of their company, this data set, much like Twitter has been for other companies, or et cetera. And they decided to close that down.
Yep.
And this presents a really big opportunity for you, no?
I mean, yeah, we don't really have that type of philosophy in our company, is that, there's this like thing that's ripe for the taking, or that it suddenly belongs to us, or it just so happens that they don't have an API at the moment, and we happen to be there with a tremendous amount of data to help folks out. But we'd be thrilled as hell if they brought an API back and people could continue to build. There's enough room for people to continue to present technology to the space. So.
Well, that's a very PC answer, and you're clearly come from an open source background, but this is a tremendous opportunity.
It's been very nice. We've definitely gotten a lot of feedback from developers who were very frustrated with the platform prior to it shutting down.
Okay.
So it has been very nice to be able to fill that space and be able to give developers direct access to resources where they can build cool technology. So now we have people all over the world that we're working with, on almost a day-to-day basis, very closely, as opposed to previously technologists couldn't get any support, and they couldn't get any feedback, and they couldn't see these new features being developed. And so taking on that role has been pretty cool.
How many API keys are we talking about? How many people using it?
I mean, we've issued lots of API keys. We have lots of registered users. We just hit about 1,000 IP addresses from around the world have hit our API in some fashion.
Okay.
With hundreds of thousands of requests since we've opened it up. So we've delivered gigabytes and gigabytes of cannabis data to all sorts of different folks.
And what time period is that? When did you open it up?
So we opened the API, I want to say 4 to 6 months ago, somewhere in there, and then we did a press release on it to kind of let people know that it was out there, and now, I mean, if you search for Cannabis API, I mean, we're right there, and so it's very popular, and we get API requests pretty much daily.
Yeah, but you're not the only ones that have a potential great opportunity to fill this void, right? I mean, there's others in the space. I mean, what do you say to the other competitors? I mean, why is Cannabis Reports the best source for that data?
I mean, because we don't really believe that there's a winner or that there's an owner of the data. The data itself belongs to people and belongs to cannabis, and so with that sort of mind frame and that mindset, it allows us to build in a much more open way and a much more collaborative way that might not exist at some of the other companies. And so that gives us sort of a one-up, because the cannabis community likes openness. But yeah, you say competitors in the space, and we just don't really even use competitors, because the data that we have, the amount of organization we've done, the structure that we've done, there really isn't anybody else out there that's done it. And so we think of everybody as potential partners. And if Leafly came to us and said, hey, we have more eyeballs than you do, and we continue to have this advantage of space in the market, and said, can we use your data and make our data better? I'd be like, hell yes, because you're going to be helping people and educating people. So it's just, I don't know, maybe I'm just a hippie a little bit, or an arts guy, I don't know.
So I'm a little bit of a hippie myself as well, nothing wrong with that. But we do still have to make money.
True.
Right? So is this data available for free in the world? I mean, how do you guys make money?
So the data is available for free, and with the background that I have in technology and working with big data, we make the accessibility to that data available to producers and retailers in the space. So they pay a nominal monthly fee to be able to kind of participate in this whole open sort of cannabis environment we have. And all the data they publish there then ends up showing up on apps and websites and all of these other places. And then they get access to the data as well through visual charts and CSV data dumps and all kinds of different things that help them run their business.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I just cannot shy away from the theme here, which is basically like, is cannabis going to be an open source forum?
Right.
Or is this going to be a private sort of me versus you type community? I mean,
Right.
it literally is an Apple, Google, iOS, Android debate.
Right.
Do you see that similarity? Is it that clear to you as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it totally is. And it was very interesting trying to explain that to investors and stuff, because we have a lot of sort of traditional investors in the company. And
Well, yeah, it's really a data company, right?
Right.
Which is
it's a big open data and organization company, and a lot of companies that we're working with now are starting to see that we solve a huge need of organizing and presenting good data to them so they can do their company better. If they're a delivery service or a delivery app, they should worry about being really awesome at that. They shouldn't worry about how do they organize 50,000 different products in the space. That's
absolutely,
that's redundant.
Yeah,
So,
let them focus on what they do really
Exactly.
well. Now I sell like I'm selling on fleet during the day. That's
Yeah,
what I pitch
no,
to. So you deliver flowers and do what you do really well. We'll worry about the logistics.
but it's the same thing. I mean, it's giving small business owners and giving technologists this underlying tools to use so that they can do their jobs better.
Yeah.
And let us handle the complexity of the industry and the data structures, because they're not going to get it.
So clearly, you're a little cut above the normal stoner in this industry. And I just wonder, where did all this fantastic data knowledge and skill come from? Where did you build that?
I mean, I have a Commodore 64 tattoo, so I've been on computers for my whole life.
Yeah.
And in terms of data stuff, I worked in retail energy trading for a big, huge energy company, and learned a tremendous amount about presenting data and munching on data and organizing data to create actionable, insights, and brought a lot of that to the cannabis space and to the technology that we continue to build. But mostly, I'm just obsessed with cannabis, everything about it. I read all the papers that come out, academic papers, phytocannabinoid synthesis process. If you search cannabinoid synthesis, I was the first one to chart it.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so
Wow.
I'm just a geek for cannabis.
Yeah,
Man.
that's what it's about. That's what it's about. But I mean, it's fascinating to watch people apply their domain expertise in other things to this industry.
Yep.
I mean, that's so much of what this show is about, is, whether that's in data or in banking or in delivery, taking that knowledge and applying it to cannabis is the future. That's the only way we get to where we're going, right?
Well, yeah, and I think it's important for a lot of people that are getting into the space to recognize what they don't know. And accept that instead of just trying to rebuild it, from the ground up over and over. And so we're starting to see some institutional companies where it's like, if you want to participate in seed to sale, you probably better be talking to BioTrack or MJ Freeway or and that's just, those are becoming pillars that are becoming industrial. Pillars, I guess is a good word for it. I mean, they're there all the time, and they're going to continue to grow and get bigger.
Yeah, and I think you're becoming very top of mind too. I mean, you told me you did an interview with MarketWatch earlier today, correct? What is it like when a mainstream sort of outlet like that approaches you and says, "Let's talk about cannabis"?
I mean, so that actually is the most exciting piece to me. I mean, since I've been doing this for a long time, and I was very involved in a lot of legalization stuff, and I've been protesting and working with that for a while. It's extremely exciting to see non-cannabis publications really be interested in the space and really give it some credence, because it's been around for a while. It's just nobody gave it the time of day, kind of,
Yeah, it's fascinating. It seems to be this groundswell. We're the Gateway Incubator in Oakland, which I still can't imagine that there is a cannabis incubator, but we're here, and I'm here, and there's 4 walls. Anyway, amazing. Yeah. So what is next for you guys? I mean, you've made all this data, you've compiled what sounds like just an amazing amount of knowledge. What's next?
So, I mean, one of the biggest things that we're trying to do right now is sort of this idea of an open cannabis future. Really be able to see if there's a possibility of introducing some open standards and some open ways about communicating about cannabis, so that we can invite everybody to be able to participate at an equal level. There's some legislative stuff, and there's some different laws that are going to be passed over the next 5 or 10 years. But if we as an industry and as a community can decide, these are some standards that we all adopt and that we all think are okay, and do that in the open and amongst ourselves, I think that there's incredible power behind that. And so that's what we're sort of, we're trying to use our data and our amount of data for good and for openness. So.
That's amazing. That sounds like a mission statement.
It's very much as part of our mission, yeah.
Yeah, no, very cool. So how expensive is that mission? And are you raising money? What does your runway look like here?
I mean, so we've capitalized to 1.2 million. We have money in the bank. We run a really scrappy small team.
Yeah, not much overhead here, right?
No,
Probably a lot of server space. That's
have remote employees in multiple states, the idea is, as you mentioned, the mission. I mean, we're a very mission-oriented company. When I moved to the Silicon Valley, being a technologist, I was extremely disappointed in the technology and the companies that were popping up, and sort of the trend of kids coming out of college and playing house with investor money and creating apps that did nothing and didn't really help technology or help people in any meaningful way. And so we run a very mission-oriented company that tries to. We all know we save money together so that we can present better stuff to the public and better education and better services.
Yeah.
So
fascinating that you bring that up, because in the first part of 2016, we're seeing a serious trend of less and less investment, particularly at the early stages. And it's forcing companies to be what I call real, basically, right? I mean, add real value. When are you going to be profitable?
Right.
Cool that you see it from that angle as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah. And just outside of profitability, do you have actual real technology?
Yeah.
Do you have something?
Anything protectable here?
Right. And is it interesting, and is this innovative, or did you take something, wrap it up, put a cannabis bow on it, and now you're trying? I mean, I think that investors are getting a lot more savvy, particularly in the cannabis space. There's been a lot of burns now. Most of the public investments and stuff have been totally bust.
The penny stocks, crazy.
I mean, yeah. And so it's. We've seen a lot of that as well, people getting wary of the space.
So we talked about Protectable. What is Protectable about Cannabis Reports?
I mean, there's some stuff that's protectable, possibly. It's not a tremendous thing that I think about a lot. Being a big open company, we plan on releasing a lot of open source software and releasing a lot of our stuff open. We've developed some cool algorithms and our recommendation engine. That's possibly protectable, pretty cool stuff. But again, there's a lot more important things to do at the moment. And we have customers that we're helping every day that are paying us monthly. And that's what's important to us right now, is continuing to serve and grow that customer base.
What's up, IC fans? We are at the new home of investing in cannabis, Gateway, in Oakland, California. It's really in two parts. So there's an incubator where they're going to help 10 companies get investment and press and advice. And they've asked me to be a mentor here, which is awesome. Thanks again, guys. Also going to be the new home of investing in cannabis. So we're going to do most of our shows here. It's a great space. In addition to the incubator, which you have to be accepted for, there's also Gateway Works, which is just a really cool place where you can come and buy a desk, a monthly desk, right? I think it's $350 for the month. Get away from your roommates. You don't have to worry about having a stuck-up landlord. It's hard to find desk space, hard to find a place to work in the cannabis world. And then you can be a part of this cannabis entrepreneur community as well, and you can benefit from the other founders. Great synergy here. If you've never been in a co-working space, it's like the way to start a company.
They're huge hemp production in Eastern Asia and lots of other much larger countries with bigger populations. Yeah. So hemp is, cannabis has been around us for a long time. We just sort of forgot about it over here, but.
Yeah. Forgot or were intentionally made to forget? Yeah.
Well, obviously intentionally. I mean, it was imposed upon us, but it's been a relatively small amount of time frame when you consider the amount of time that cannabis has had an impact on humans. If you look at like the early agrarian societies and like the way that humans moved around the earth, I mean, they were chasing after bountiful plant resources. So like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the Europeans, they settled near coastlines that had huge amounts of seaweed they could eat. And I mean, have you read any of Robert Connell Clark? He wrote Marijuana Botany back in the day, which was the original kind of Bible of cannabis. But he goes into really, really awesome, cool stories about the history of cannabis from a human perspective, and talks about thousands of years ago how people drug around their cannabis plants with them miles and miles and miles, and continued to use it as resources, and seeds would drop off along the way. And
the more recent research that's kind of debunking the indica sativa norm,
but it's
right?
that's a societal thing, though. Scientists haven't used indica sativa hybrid for 10-15 years.
Okay.
Like, it's not been an accepted scientific thing for a
just
while.
us catching up, basically.
Well, so basically what happened is consumers needed a way to have simple words to describe the sort of different feelings that had to go with it. And generally speaking, they used to be scientific terms during the 70s and 80s, and the high THC stuff was generally called sativa, and then you had indica, which was not so high THC with other stuff in it. It was more couch locky, and they became consumer terms. But
Yeah, I mean, just anecdotally, I guess I've known this for some time.
right,
Because I'll often wake up in the morning and have a little indica,
right,
and I feel energized.
right,
from it.
because that word is meaningless.
It's meaningless, right?
Because of the work of really awesome seed companies, breeders continue to go throughout the world and find landrace stuff that's been grown for generations in the same area that has unique characteristics that make those things special.
Yeah.
So you'll notice we have Jack Herer flowers from these multiple cultivators. So you do have that separation and that specificity.
Sure, yeah.
And then when you go to the strain itself, you can see the seed company that it came from, find information about that. But then the parental lineage is what I was talking about. So we know that Jack Herer is NL5, skunk number 1, and Haze.
Yep.
If we take the parents of those, and the parents of those, and the parents of those, eventually we stop at the countries. So we know that Jack Herer is Afghani, Indian, Thai, Colombian, and Mexican. And so when we start to fill out reviews that go all the way back to these land races, then we can pull back and come the other way too. And so you start to discover, like, Colombian makes me feel this, Indian makes me feel it. And that's such a much cooler
That's
and
an
and
empowering moment.
It
right,
is.
as a consumer.
Right.
You're just like, now I know why I liked that.
Right.
Right.
And you start to understand, like, oh, this flavor that I like from this sour diesel, like, I find this in other strains that have Pakistani land races in it. And then it's like, oh, maybe that flavor is from there, possibly. There's very few places on Earth that create strains that allow for the V-side stuff to actually occur. It's been found in really specific regions in Thailand. It's been found in really specific regions in Africa. But that's solely based on where that strain was cultivated for many years and was able to gain those traits and do that.
Yeah.
And so absolutely.
Much like the soil associated with growing grapes to make wine, right? It's such a
Right,
similar.
but the soil is only one piece of it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the climate, it's the rain, it's the temperature, it's all of that stuff. Ultimately, what we run into a lot is people are very busy doing their own stuff, that they don't have the time to build technology stuff with others as much as they'd like to. The endocannabinoid system, which is basically like our internal system that exists in all mammals and most animals, it regulates happiness and pain and digestive systems and all kinds of it's a very, very important system in our body. We didn't discover that until we were researching cannabis. And exactly like we were, sending people to the moon with NASA, what we got out of it was, medical research and medical devices and mathematics and programming and all these ancillary things when we were just trying to go to the moon. So I think doing that with cannabis, we can open up a lot of doors and discover a lot of things for sure.
Well, we've come to my favorite part of the episode here. I'm always fascinated by the guests, personal consumption of cannabis, because that's what we're all here doing. At the end of it's Thursday. You've presumably worked all day. You're gonna go home, and what do you smoke? How do you smoke?
I end up smoking out of a nice glass, multi-filtered. I guess it's a bong. I prefer joints, though. Definitely is still my favorite.
Okay.
It brings in the social aspect of cannabis, and
does,
to
yeah.
truly get all the flavor and effects out of it that you want. You're basically running a vaporizer when you have a joint. You've got a nice little heated end that pulls hot air over the cannabis, and it's just a perfect
But you can't deny that it's not nearly as healthy for you, correct?
Oh, of course not. No, I mean, yeah, you're burning stuff and inhaling it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I totally understand it's not as healthy.
I love joints as well too,
Yeah.
but I realized that my lungs feel a little heavier
Yep.
as a result, particularly like the next morning.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also not efficient. You smoke a lot of weed when you roll joints.
You do. But again, for me, it's the flavor
Yeah.
and the experience.
Yeah.
And there's something about combining all the elements together and fusing it with fire. You know, that's a beautiful thing to do.
There's
So
some irony in someone as technical as you preferring the most non-technical way to consume cannabis.
well, I also have a PAX 2 in my pocket. So
Okay,
you know,
okay.
I'm about gadgets and stuff too. But
All right.
but if you ask me, you know, what's my
What's your
favorite,
go-to? Yeah.
It's going to be a joint. Is my favorite every
Got it.
time. Always has
Have you
been.
tried a vape exhale?
I haven't tried. Well, you know, no, I haven't.
Vape exhale is basically a combination of a vaporizer and a bong together.
Really?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I highly recommend you check that out.
Like you need to filter the vape?
Like it's like a base that has like a, what's it called?
Is that what you smoke out of? Is it-
Sometimes, yeah. No, that's a go-to piece of mine.
Nice.
And then it has like a glass head on it. So it actually vapes through water and through like a bubbler.
See, that's way too much filtration for me. I feel like if you're gonna vape already, then like you're already leaving out so much, and then you're gonna run it through water. Yeah, I don't think. No.
Certainly there are many terpenes that die in the process.
Yeah, I mean, I
unfortunately.
don't know if they die, but
Yeah, maybe that's the wrong.
Yeah, I don't know about bubbling vape. That seems like an interesting experience. I haven't tried that. I have a volcano as well.
You know, I was
like
skeptical.
vaping, so.
Yeah, I was skeptical.
Yeah.
The volcano is no fun at all. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't think it's fun.
Really?
You know? Yeah.
Oh,
I
man.
mean, you get very medicated,
Yep.
but it's like this big bag, and you know, I want to
Yeah.
smoke something.
Yeah.
Like that. Anyway, vape exhale. You have to come over and try
I would
it. You have to
totally,
come over
yeah,
and
I would
try
love to check it out. It sounds cool. I mean, it sounds like probably the smoothest thing
it. It
ever,
is.
so.
It's super smooth.
Yeah.
It's super smooth. Well, Dave, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for being on. Nice
Absolutely.
to meet you.
You as well.
And good luck to you. I'm going to go look up some strains.
Yeah, man.
CannabisReports.com.
Yep.
CannabisReports.com. You want to plug anything else? Your Twitter? Or?
I mean, no, you can follow us, all of our Twitter and Facebook and everything are all at the bottom of our website. And definitely check out our new cannabis studies section, which is pretty cool. We have 365 academic studies on 99 different conditions. Super helpful for people getting into cannabis. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks for watching, guys. We are everywhere that content is consumed. iTunes, YouTube, what else? SoundCloud, Instagram, anywhere you want to look, we're there. Thanks to Gateway for hosting us. The class starts in 2 weeks. It's going to be dope, guys. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Investing in cannabis is 100% independent media. That means there's no parent company. We don't have anybody telling us what to do. But in order to maintain that, I need you. So there's this great startup called Patreon in San Francisco, and they allowed you to donate a little bit of money every month, 5, 10, 20 bucks, to help support the creators, us investing in cannabis, of this great content that you love to watch. Even if you aren't in a position to come out to the world, or you got a conservative job, if you're smoking cannabis, if you're enjoying it, just donate a little bit of money to us anonymously. And it's just your little way to stay connected to the industry, even if you can't shout it from the rooftops yet. Just give 5, 10 bucks a month. I mean, you're buying that weed anyways. And we're giving away free stuff. This episode, we got a nice pot of coffee t-shirt here, so if you want that. Let's see what else we have. We got the coffee version. We got some CBD stuff as well. So if you don't want to get high at work, maybe just drinking some coffee. So head over to patreon.com/investing in cannabis. It gives you a chance to invest in cannabis.